let's talk to sports journalist, mild mocker, Chris Skudder. Chris, good morning to you. What do you make of all of this? And obviously you've been in the business a very long time. This whole impartiality, I mean, is Lineker within his rights to do what he's doing whilst being employed by the BBC, do you think?
Well, bottom line is he's freelance, so that's always what he's maintained. Now, I'm just going to take you back to the start of the World Cup in Qatar, when Gary Lineker, the first thing almost he said on the BBC on their first broadcast was a speech about human rights. He was there on his soapbox, and it took a few people by surprise, really. I mean, he was there airing maybe not his views. We don't know who wrote that speech as it was. But, I mean, is that different to what has happened and his comments on social media? I'm not sure it is, really. And I think that's why a lot of people in the business have come out on his side. And as Aidan was saying, you know, I mean, nobody wants to work for the BBC tonight. I mean, they will have commentary because they have what they call the world feed, where people who call the matches, commentate on the matches, are less well known. But that's what they're going to have. There's going to be no presentation. Nobody will do it. You know, as soon as Ian Wright said, I'm not doing it, it was like a pack of cards. And so it's a real mess for the BBC. Impartiality. I mean, the trouble is, Stephen, as you well know, I mean, the social media and Twitter in particular has caused a real problem because it's become an aside for everybody where they feel they can say things that maybe they wouldn't broadcast. I was always told, working for a different broadcaster, that you don't tweet what you wouldn't broadcast. Maybe, but it would in different times now. And Gary's always maintained that, you know, he doesn't tweet just willy-nilly or when he's had a drink. He does it when, you know, he believes in something. He's not going to back down, I don't think. And judging by the way everyone's lined up behind him in the industry, then maybe the Beeb are going to have to back down.
What do you make of the BBC's handling of this? Because they kept relatively quiet this week, didn't they, as the story just got bigger and bigger. And then yesterday it seemed as though they had asked Gary Lineker to step aside. Richard Bacon, their former BBC presenter, has said they have thrown a canister of petrol on the issue. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's inflamed, certainly. I mean, it was 3 days. I mean, I think the fact that it could have got to the end of the week and nothing happened, and all of a sudden, I mean, clearly what has happened, they've been talking to him and saying, can you make some kind of statement? I think the trouble has been his reference was inflammatory. He's not called the BBC Nazis. It's the language. But as soon as you mention 1930s Germany, that's the image that comes into mind, isn't it? So they've been talking all week. He has been clear that he's not going to change his mind. So they've come to this impasse. You know, that gap it doesn't reflect well on them now, I don't think. And well, the interesting thing is going to be just where it goes now, because if he doesn't back down, something's got to give. Then where does it leave Match of the Day? I mean, some people would say, well, we don't need pundits, we don't need, you know, people. Opinion's always divided on social media, isn't it? But some would say, oh, we don't need commentators, but not pundits and presenters for Match of the Day. But the majority do. And, you know, I mean, something has got to give. I mean, tonight's going to be a fascinating watch. There'll be football, but it'll be very dry, and it'll be, here it is, off it goes, and on to the next week, which is going to be fascinating, I think.
Right, OK, well, let's get your personal opinion, Chris. Because I tell you what, we both worked together for a big broadcaster, and you know, and there were various rules and things in place that we had to follow. At the BBC, the Director General, the DG, in 2020 said, if you're employed by the BBC, when it comes to social media, you have to be impartial. And so all the rank and file are doing it. Gary Lineker hasn't, and he's been called in, and now he's done it again. I mean, there can't be a situation, can there?
Haven't they said, Stephen, that they're not stopping him have an opinion on things that he believes in, and he clearly does believe in this issue, the immigration thing and refugees. He's compassionate about it. It's the language he's used, which has changed.
But that's damaging to the organisation, isn't it? And to the BBC, which presumably they then have a right to say, well, if you're damaging our reputation, we don't want you.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's happened. But, I mean, if you look at the statement yesterday, it all seems a bit woolly to me until we've got an agreed and clear position on his use of social media, which says to me, they've said to him, look, just rein it in a little bit. It's all a bit woolly. And now they've come to this where he has maybe overstepped the mark with that reference. It's not called them Nazis, but, it's a reference which inflames a lot of opinion, clearly, So that's the issue. And they've got to decide now how they're going to go forward with his use of language. I don't know, but he's digging his heels in. It may be that he just walks away now. I don't know, but I mean, I think the fact he will be feeling pretty good this morning. I think that the fact that everyone has rallied behind him, all of his media colleagues, even the commentator Steve Wilson coming out last night. I think people thought that they would turn up and do their job, but it's a world feed now, which is a basic thing. If you're in any country in the world, what you'd hear in their coverage of the Premier League is what you'll see on the BBC tonight.
What do you think will happen then? I mean, looking ahead to next Saturday, do you think that is it possible for it to blow over by then? Or do you think both sides are too entrenched now?
I don't think there'll be another programme like tonight's going to look. So something will give. I think the Beeb will back down a bit. I don't think we've seen the end of Gary. He's a popular figure. I mean, listen, it does divide opinion. He earns a lot of money from the taxpayers. And always when you have opinions, people don't agree. There's always somebody who doesn't agree. Gary is... I mean, I probably wouldn't have... When it comes to social media, I always think of what do people want to hear from me. And, Gary's not a political guy, but he has strong beliefs. Where do we draw the line, really? When can you say... I mean, it happened to me once when I was a former broadcaster and I was accused of crossing the line, and it was about protecting football contracts. I upset somebody and it blew over. It's the same kind of thing. But the BBC is different because of the impartiality rules, and people are paying his wages. So there are a lot of people who just want him to stop doing what he does. But he is freelance, and the BBC have said that we're not going to stop you having an opinion. So I think that he will think about that, and there may be a little bit of an impasse, and then they'll come together and they'll muddle through it. Because what are they going to do? I mean, if nobody's going to do the programme next week, it's a massively popular. It's the Premier League. It's the biggest football league in the world, and the BBC are proud of having their highlight show on a Saturday night. So I think this is going to be a one-off tonight, and a lot of it's going to. The story will rumble on for days because of the talks that'll go on. But I don't think Gary's going to stop tweeting, put it that way.
Yeah, lovely. Skudder, thanks very much indeed. Good to talk to you this morning.